Hey guys, so in this video we are going to implement the game over and the ability to restart the game back from the beginning. So let's start. Okay, so all this is done in the game manager. So the game manager is the one dealing with all the game flow. So it's where we have the custom event to start the game. It's where we are dealing with the variables that define basically the state of the game. So basically the player loses the game when the ammo reaches 0 or when the time reaches 0 in either one of these conditions. So basically we have two different places where we could have a game over. So basically what we need is, so that we don't duplicate the code, we need a single place to deal with stopping the game. Now, we already have an event to start the game, which is this event right here. So when we start the game, we are enabling the crosshair, disabling the cursor, setting this game started variable to true. We are enabling the target spawners, and we are updating the labels, in this case to the initial values of the variables. Now, we can reuse most of this event to stop the game, because basically we are doing the opposite. When we stop the game, we disable the crosshair and enable the cursor. We set this variable to false, and we stop the spawners, and then we have to also deal with the labels. So basically what we are going to do, we are going to reuse this event to stop the game. And to reuse this event, basically we need to add an argument where we can say, okay, start the game true, or stop the game, or start the game false, which means stop the game. And then we can use the argument that we pass here, so the parameter that we pass here, which is a true or false value, and we can use it to feed into each one of these nodes right here to enable or disable it. So if we are starting the game, we enable the crosshair. If we are stopping the game, we disable the crosshair, for example. And now, when we have this new, so now we add this new argument, and now we can use this new argument. So the first thing that we are going to do is use this new argument, and I'm going to disconnect this, and we are going to use this argument to basically set the value of our game started variable, which is the first thing that we are going to do, because then later we can use the value of that variable to feed into each one of these nodes. So the first thing that we do is we set the variable game started not to a true value like we had here, but to the argument that is passed right here. If we pass the value true, game started is true. If we pass false, the game started is false. And then we can continue with what we had before. But instead of using this boolean right here, for example, we are going to use the value of the game started. So, and basically we are going to reuse this game started value that we have right here on all the other nodes that we have in front. So when we start the game, we want to enable the crosshair, so we can pass the value directly. When we start the game, we want to disable the cursor. So basically we need to negate the value of this variable and feed it here as an input to the cursor set visible. And to negate the value, we have negate, exactly, and we can feed it this value and feed it right here. So if we say start game true, we are going to disable the cursor, so this value becomes false. If we say start game false, we are going to enable the cursor, so it's going to give it this value as true. And now we have these three. I'm going to just disconnect this also. So we have these three blocks, three nodes actually, to enable the target spawner. And we also need to change this, because right now the target spawner, the event of the target spawner, the custom event enable, does not accept arguments. And we need to pass it an argument as well, because right now we can only call this event to enable the target spawner, but we have no way to disable the target spawner. So first, let's just go back to the target spawner and add that argument. So the enable event is going to accept an argument, and we are going to use this argument to set the value of this game started variable. So let me just put, oh, not the get, we need the set variable. Set variable, set graph variable. So the first thing, I'm going to disconnect this once again. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to get this argument and set the game started variable. So if we say enable, the game started is true. If we say disable, the game started is false. And I'm going to delete this from here. And then we can use the game started as the condition for the while loop. and we can connect this again. So when we call the enable, the game started is true, and the while loop uses that and becomes true, and it start instantiating the objects. If we pass a false value here, the game started is false, and the while loop not only does not begin a new while loop, as it stops the while loop that we already had running before, because the variable, which is a graph variable, it's a local variable, becomes false, and the other loop also stops. And now we go back to our game manager, and in the game manager we can now add an argument to each one of these custom events, custom event triggers, and we can pass the value here. Okay, this is the value of that argument, of this argument, and of this argument. So we start the game true, it passes the value true, we start the game false, it passes the value as false, and stops everything. And now let's just check, see if it's working, and then we have to deal with the labels. But the labels we have to make some small changes. Oh, and we need to do something else before starting it, because we are calling the start game from the label ready, and in the label ready we are not passing an argument, and now we need to pass an argument. So on the label ready we need to call it with a boolean withdraw of true. So basically when we press the label we call start game on the game manager with the true value. Now let's see if it works. We never know. And I pressed the label and it started, so the game the AMO is also working. I have the time, so okay, the game is running now. But to become easier to test it, let's go back to the game manager and just change the initial AMO so that we can just finish the AMO quickly and check if the game over is actually working. Oh, we are not triggering the custom event for the game over, I think. Yeah, we are not triggering custom event. Okay, so now we have the way to start the game with a false parameter, but we need to actually call it. We are not calling it from anywhere. So basically we need to call it from two places. Here where the AMO reaches 0, and here where when the time reaches also 0. So basically what we need here is an if condition that if AMO is equal to 0, we call the start game with a false value. So we call start game on this game object, not here. We add an argument and we say that this is a boolean withdraw with a false value, so that we can stop the game. And the condition that we need here is if the value is equal. And now it is an integer equals. And basically here we can check if the AMO value, and we can feed it here, if the AMO value is equal to 0, and we give it as the condition, not here, we give it as a condition for our if condition, and we can continue from here. So we press the mouse button, we subtract 1 from the AMO, we update the value of the AMO variable, we update the AMO label, and if the AMO value is equal to 0, then we stop the game, calling start game with a false value. Now let's see if it works. And then we are also going to need to call this when the time reaches 0, but let's just see if it works, and then we add that. So we have our game, I press the label, I only have 1, and I press. Okay, and the time stopped, and the AMO is also stopped, but I can still destroy targets, and the targets are not being destroyed. So let me just check what's happening, and that's probably something here in the target spawner that we are making a mistake. So we are setting the game started variable as a false, and we are feeding it as a condition for the while loop. Why is it not stopped? Because we are, even if we, okay, we can just add a condition here. I didn't think we needed one, but maybe I'm making a mistake. I don't remember exactly how I done it. So we can do something like this, and we are, yeah, we can use the condition that, we can use the condition for the while loop the game started. So the while loop only runs if the game started, but we are only going to continue here actually if the game has started. Trying to understand why I need to add that if condition. Let's see if it works. But I thought I didn't need to add it because I would be calling the loop with a false value, so no, the target is still working. Let me just check. Oh, I paused the game. No, so the target spawner. Yeah, the target spawner is still working, so it means that, oh, this is still true, and this is false and true. Well, okay. Why is it? Oh, maybe the graph variable is a local one? Or maybe I just using the value. I cannot use the value that comes out of this, maybe? Okay, so let me check. So I changed the variable. Okay, this is a little bit strange, but let's see. So if this is true, and I'm going to connect also here. Let me just check and see if it works. Trying to understand the difference, but to be honest, I was not expecting it for it. And it worked. Okay, so let me try to, at least for my understanding, what's happening here is that when we use this node, so we are setting the variable here, the game started, and we have this input where we set a value, and basically we are passing the value true or false to the set variable node, and we are setting the value of game started. And I was expecting that when I use the output of this node, I was expecting to be using the game started value and not the parameter that I just passed here. But it seems that I was actually using the parameter. It's actually giving me not the game started value, but the parameter that I pass here. And why it should work either way. But the problem here is that when I call this the first time, when I call the enable on the spawner the first time, I'm passing a true value, and that true value is being fed to the while loop, and the while has a condition of true. So I was not passing the game started variable, I was passing the actual parameter that came from the custom event, and that's why when I call the second time, the first loop that I created is not stopping because it's still using the parameter and not the actual variable that we have that we are changing. So let me just check something just to make sure that I am not saying a mistake. So I need to probably change the variable and not use the output, but the actual value of the variable on my loop. And in this way, I should not need that if condition that I used before. Let me just check. So game started and it finished. Okay, so basically that's it. So that's a really important thing. I haven't encountered this yet because I was not used to use this output from here. So I was really convinced that the output from this node was the variable value and not the parameter or the input that you were giving the node. So what this output gives me is the value that I'm giving as an input and not the value of the variable. Something to to know. And now let's go back here to the game manager. So we are stopping the game, and like I said before, we also need to set this here. Let me check. So we need to also do this not only with the AMO but also with the time. And with the time, so we have the time here, we are updating the labels, and we can do it exactly like we did here before. So we can copy all this and paste all these nodes here. And now we can set this to the if condition, and basically we can use here is the time, where is the time, this one, and we can use it here to feed it to the comparison. So if the time variable value is equal to 0, then we stop the game. And now I'm just thinking, now I need to be careful when I'm using the output of the nodes, because I start using them. For example, here, I'm using this output of the node, and now, in this case, just to explain once again, in this case, I think there is not a problem because I'm just subtracting the value and giving it to the time, and the value that gets in here, it's assigned to the variable, and it's the same value that goes out from the output. But on that case, what was different, because we had two different, we were calling the same event 2 different times, so we had like 2 different flows to deal with. That's it. Basically, what I mean by this is that you can probably get away most of the times using the output from here, because it will be exactly the same value that you have in the variable. But okay, so we have the time, and we also have the game over when we have the time, and basically what we want afterwards is to show a label called that says game over. So let's just import the label, and I'm going to import a new asset, and we have the label game over. Let's just import into the screen, and the label game over is exactly in the same place as the label ready. Let's just put it in the same layer, and this label game over starts disabled. And what we are going to do is that we are going to reuse the exact same component from the label ready, because we will, when the player has the game over and presses the label, we are going to call again start game, and the game is going to start again from the beginning. So here in the label, we game over, let's add a script machine, and we can reuse the label graph. Oh, and see that it's already saying, okay, you don't have a collider. So basically what we are going to do is, let's just duplicate the label ready. I think it's even better this way. So we just duplicate the label ready, we change the label game over, and we say, okay, label game over, and it has already everything set up. So we have the collider, and we have the variables, and the graph, we have everything. So we just need to disable this. And now on the game manager, we need to create a new variable. So let me just check. Yeah, we need to create the label ready, and we need to create a reference to the label game over as well, so that we can, oh no, the label ready we don't need, we just need the label game over to show the label game over. And this one is, you can just call it a game object, so that we have the label game over here. And now in the game manager, so when it's game over, and I'm going to deal with the labels in just a minute. So when it's game over, what we are going to do is we are going to use the label game over, and we are going to set active. Game over set active, this value, and we are going to enable the label game over. And when we press the label game over, the label will hide itself and start the game back again. So let's just see. So we have the label ready, we press, we have the game over, we press the label game over, and it starts again. Everything was really quick because we didn't have a lot of ammo, and I probably clicked the screen more than once. Let's try it again. So we have the ready, I press 1. Oh, you already have, oh, okay, I know why it's doing this, because I'm always enabling the game over, even when I start the game, and I don't want to call the game over when I start the game, so I need to add a condition here. So if, and now we can use the game started. So if the game started, I can probably use the value that I'm using there instead of doing this. I don't know if I prefer to have like all these connections to the same output from here. You can see that we are outputting this to a lot of places, but I don't know what's better, to be honest, in terms of organization, because it works the same. So if the game is started, now if the game has not started, so we need to negate this. So if the game is not started, now if the game has not started, we are going to set this, the label game over. Or probably we can just use, sorry, just going back, probably we can just use not an if condition, but we are setting the label game over to true when the game has not started. So we can just negate the value once again, but we don't even need the condition. So we can just negate the value, and when the game starts, the label game over is disabled. When the game stops, the label game over is enabled. Just check this again. Just play. Okay, so we have this ready, and the game finishes. We can still shoot the other targets, but it won't update the score, so it's not a problem. And we can start again. But now we have a problem, because you see that the ammo was not reset to 0, and the time was not reset as well, the score. So we need to reset all this when we start the game. And so that's what we are going to do here. So when I was saying that we need to deal with updating the labels, we need to do this when we are starting the game. Each time we start the game, we need to do two things. We need to reset the values of the variables, and we need to actually update the labels with the new values. So now here we need a condition. So if, and now we can use, you can use this. So if game has started, what we are going to do is we are going to first set the values of the variables. So let's say we are going to set the ammo, no, not get. We are going to set ammo to the initial value. In this case, let's put like 100. Now I'm going to start with 10, and not even here. I mean, we can start here with 10, and then, I mean, these values are going to be overridden by the values that we put here. So, so when we start the game, we set the variable ammo to an integer literal of 10. So the player will start with 10 bullets. Just a way for us to check this and to test. Actually, we are going to set the time to, this is a float literal, we are going to set the time to 60, so 60 seconds. And we are going to set the score to 0. So let me just duplicate this. We are going to set the, oh, this is not a graph variable, this is a scene variable, and we are going to set the score to 0. So let's just set an integer variable, which is a 0. And then we can actually reset all the labels. So we are going to update the ammo label, update the label time and the label score with the values of the label, of the variables that we just set. Now let's try to see if it's working. Okay, label ready. We press the label. Game over. I mean, we are stopping the spawner, but you can see that I mean, when we stop the spawner, it stops instantiating new targets, but the ones that were already instantiated just continue on the screen. So we just need to check that even if targets are there, if we press it, if we are actually changing the score or not. But then we have the game over, the time stopped, we ended the ammo, so it's okay, and we have the score. So when I press game over, it should reset everything back to 0. So 10, 0, and start again from the beginning. And we can play again. You can see that I was destroying. Oh, it didn't enable the game over again. Why? Just check. So the game over. Oh, I know why. Because we are setting active, and we don't want to set active, because when the label hides itself, basically it's the sprite render that we are disabling. So here we don't want to actually disable the label game over. We want to have the label game over there, but just disable. I mean, no, we are going to like. Oh, the problem is that it doesn't accept a custom event. It doesn't accept a custom event. That's the main problem. Let's just try to see what happens. So here in the edit graph, instead of doing this, like disabling the sprite and the collider, let's just see if we can just call the start game on the game manager. And then if we can just like set active and game object set active, and just going to disable it. And let's see if it works. Because this way we are disabling the label when it starts, when it ends, and then we are enabling it again and disabling and enabling. The problem was that we were activating the label, but the label was active, but we were just disabling the sprite render and the collider. So, okay, label game over, we press it, back from the beginning, game over, again, we press it, back from the beginning. Then we have this problem as well, because we can just like keep restarting the game even while we have like targets in the middle of the screen, but that's not a big problem. I mean, this is good enough for what we are trying to accomplish here. This is more about the Unity visual scripting than anything else. And so we can just disable this. And this is it. I mean, so we are starting the game. Oh, we have to just fix one more thing in the game manager, which is, you can see that when we start the game, and now let's go back to the game manager. So game manager, and let's go back, put back the values of the ammo. So we have 100, and right now we have one problem that really bothers me, which is when we press the ready, you see that when we press here ready, our ammo is not 100 but is 99. This is because when we press the label and it starts the game, when we press the label and it starts the game, since we press the input, and when we call the event start game, it immediately changes the variable of the game started, and on the same frame, this onUpdate is running, and the game started is true, and it still detects the input get mouse button down, and so it still detects this the shooting behavior, and so it still subtracts 1 from the ammo. So we need to prevent this, and to prevent this is really easy in a way, is that we need to just tell the game to skip 1 frame between activating the start game and continuing with everything else. And to do that, let me just check if I'm not making a mistake again, because I'm making a lot of mistakes in this video, so let me just check. Yes, it's here in the start game. I'm correct. So what we need to do is that we need to use a node, which is a next frame. Wait for next frame. And what this node does is that we are going to call the start game. We are going to connect this. Actually, let's just do something like this. Next frame. For us, we don't notice, okay? But what the game is going to do is that we are going to press the label. The label is going to call the start game. But since we are telling the game, okay, we need to wait to the next frame to actually change the variable and do everything else, since it's on the next frame, when we change the game started to true, it won't trigger this get mouse button down, because the game started, when this update actually runs, the game started is going to be true, and the mouse button down happened in the last frame and not on this one. So that's why we need to use this next frame. Since we are using the next frame, we also need to use this as a coroutine. Since all the times you are using something like wait for next frame, wait for seconds, wait for something, remember that the custom event needs to be have this coroutine checkbox checked. Now let's see if it actually solves the problem. And ready, and we have. And now it's okay. And it's working okay. And so this is it. I mean, about the game flow. So starting the game, stopping the game. See that we have this big event here that probably we could refactor to some small custom events. And I think one approach here in visual scripting probably is to use these custom events a lot, even inside the same graph, because it's closely related to functions in coding. So I think it's a good approach to do something like this. but I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. Like, it's the first time I'm using the Unity Visual Scripting. So, but I think from a theoretical point of view, I think it's most closely related to coding. So, for example, if I was like programming this, I would say, okay, I want to update this label and that label with that value. I would create separate functions to do all that, so that I would be duplicating this code in more than one place. So I would have like small functions like we have here. But like I said, I'm not entirely sure if this is the best practice in Unity Visual Scripting, but I think in a way it's easier to have, okay, this one here and another one, a small one and a small one, instead of having like these big flows of nodes that are really hard to follow. But that's just my opinion at this moment while I'm just learning how to work with this. And so, yeah, this is it. This is about what I had about like finishing the game in a way. So we can start the game, we have the game over, we can restart the game. And in the next videos, I want to show you how you can publish this game to the web. I mean, how you can create a WebGL build, how you can upload it to itch or even to Unity. I remember the name. Unity has their own platform for where you can showcase your WebGL projects. And yeah, so I hope I see you in the next video, and thanks.